All right, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Johns Hopkins School of Education Master in Science Education Policy virtual webinar. My name is Sion John. I'm the Assistant Director of Admissions here at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Also presenting today, I have my colleague from the Office of Admissions, and he will introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is James McCarty. I am the Associate Director of Admissions here at the School of Education at Johns Hopkins. I'm excited to connect with all of you today, and I'm excited for you all to learn more about the education policy program that we offer. Really, my big message to all of you is just congratulations on taking the first step, moving forward, further pursuing your educational goals. And most importantly, I always like to stress that you are never going through this process alone. I am within our Office of Admissions, I'm the point person or liaison for the education policy program. And my contact information will be listed on the slide at the very end of this program. So I share that with all of you to know, please don't ever hesitate to reach out. Please stay connected. And I look forward to building a rapport with all of you and welcoming all of you to the School of Education in the very near future. Thanks so much.
Thank you, James. Also presenting today, we have Professor and Faculty Lead of the Master of Science in Education program, Dr. Dennis Kramer, joining us today. And please keep in mind, today's webinar is being recorded. We will be able to share a link to the recorded video with you after the event is complete within 1 week. There will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. I would like to share the agenda for today's virtual webinar. We will kick off the presentation sharing an overview of the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Then Dr. Kramer will go over the details of the education policy program. Lastly, I'll wrap it up with admissions requirements, financial aid, and scholarships, and leave the floor open for questions at the end. And to start, we are one of 9 schools at Johns Hopkins University. We began offering college courses for teachers in 1909, and then we became our own school in 2007. We are proud to share that the Johns Hopkins School of Education is consistently ranked one of the top schools in education by the U.S. News and World Report. And for school enrollment, we have approximately 1,741 students. We offer 25 graduate programs, which includes our doctoral, master's, and graduate certificate programs. And we have a strong network of over 24,000 SOE alums. And for faculty introduction, Dr. Dennis Kramer is a visiting associate professor and the faculty lead for the education policy program at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. Dr. Kramer's research focuses on using behavioral insights to understand education-based decision-making, the antecedents and outcomes of federal, state, and local policies, and broadly the economics of education. His work has been featured in several top peer-reviewed journals within higher education, education policy, and public administration. Before his current role, Dr. Kramer served on the faculty at the University of Florida and was the founding director of the UF Education Policy Research Center. At this time, I would like to hand the floor over to Dr. Kramer. Welcome.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you. And thanks, everyone, for being here. Excited to talk about this program. I want to echo the excitement that you heard from my colleagues. Really special program. And I think a really unique opportunity for, education policy innovation to occur. We're in sort of a critical period for individuals to think about education and education policy going forward. So next slide. So, as a faculty member, I think, it's really hard for us to give any presentation without like a small sort of lecture or insights demonstration. But I think this slide really speaks to why we at Johns Hopkins created this education policy program. Right? We know that there has been sort of a recent shift in thinking about accountability and in thinking about the role of local, state, and federal agencies in the education space. And that shift has sort of increased the need or increase the desire for a set of informed staff members or a set of informed education policy practitioners to understand the policy landscape. And at the same time, we've seen these agencies and districts and, post-secondary education systems become incredibly complex, right? They've become complex. They become sort of this regulatory or compliance-based organization. They have taken on sort of policy initiation, policy development, goals or activities, along with their sort of long-standing implementation activities and goals. And all that is sort of wrapped around this complex sort of political environment where education is sort of a hotly debated and oftentimes discussed topic at any political level. And so because of all this complexity and because of the sort of shift in accountability, right, agencies have started to begin or have adopted these sort of processes to initiate, design, and carry out a broad range of interventions, right? You ask sort of any education practitioner, right? They're all focused on sort of increasing success for students. And that could be early childhood students, or it could be sort of graduate school students who are pursuing a PhD, right? Across the spectrum, we have this sort of intense and intentional focus on how do we support students through the process. And that comes through a variety of interventions and policies. And these policies sometimes come in the form of structural changes to schools or teachers, or fiscal policy changes to the way our resources are allocated, the way we think about curriculum, and the way we think about assessment. And so because there's this intense push for innovation, both from a programmatic interventions, but also policy interventions, think tanks, nonprofit organizations, even state agencies themselves are really looking for a sort of set of graduates in the education space that understand how policy is made, that understand how effective policy can be communicated, and how to implement those policies systematically in a variety of contexts. And so, and I think, a big piece of our program is not only do you sort of get that understanding of the policy process and policy implementation, but we also want to make sure that you are a critical policy evaluator, that you have the skills and tools to evaluate policy, right? You implement it, you evaluate it, you see if it works. And then if it doesn't, you reevaluate it, you make changes to the policy, and it's a continual cycle. And so our program is unique, and we'll talk about this when we get to the curriculum, in that we want to provide you with those research-based skills. Next slide, please. So our program is designed intentionally to be research-based, be grounded in real-world, contemporary education policy debates and topics, and to provide you relevant work skills and knowledge. You can be successful in the education policy space. Now, I will say education policy for our program, we talk about it, the whole continuum of education, but we do have a large focus on K-12 policy. My background is in higher education policy, and we have a number of other faculty members who work in early childhood or international comparative education policy. But again, a lot of the education policy discourse occurs in sort of the K-12 space. You take between 11 and 12 credits if you take 12 credits if you take the optional experiential learning credit. All of our courses are offered online. Nearly all of them are asynchronous, so you do them at your own pace with synchronous options. For example, I'm teaching the education finance course right now. We have videos online and weekly discussions and assignments, and then I meet weekly with students who want to talk about a contemporary finance topic. And so if the topic is of interest to them, they'll show up to the night 5 p.m. webinar or 5 p.m. lecture. We'll have an informal conversation about that. We'll sort of debrief. There's no assignments that come out of it. It's really sort of supplemental to learning. We also require a 1-week DC-based seminar at the beginning of your program. This is what we call our summer intensive. It's a 5-day intensive summer component where you'll get exposed to some of the top leaders in the education policy space. Last year, we had former Secretary of Education John King come talk, amongst others. And our goal is to expose you to these really thoughtful and intentional education policy leaders. You know, we also sort of leverage the fact that Johns Hopkins is incredibly close to the sort of epicenter of federal education policy conversations. And so as part of this intensive, we'll go visit think tanks. We'll go visit other education organizations. The goal here is to help you start to build your network of education policy professionals. Our students finish, if you go full-time in 1 year, if you go part-time, you finish in 2 years. And I think what is also unique is every single one of our faculty have significant education or public policy background. We have faculty members who have worked at a state Department of Education, at school districts, at the U.S. Department of Education. We have faculty that worked in the White House on education policy topics. And so our faculty all come with these real world experiences that they bring to the classroom and to our discussions. And those are really key to understanding, here's what sort of the textbook says policy implementation is. Here's how it actually looks in real life. Here's how the education policy sausage is made. And so those conversations are critical for the development of our students in this program. Next slide, please. So you'll see here sort of sequence of courses. What you see here is the sort of the full-time approach, right? So you start in the summer with introduction to statistics and introduction to education policy. It says hybrid in person because that course is the course that includes the summer intensive. You'll notice as you look across this curriculum that we have 3 research methods classes. So we have an introduction to statistics, an intermediate statistics course, and then an understanding education research course. This is a hallmark of our program. And I think something that Johns Hopkins does that very few Masters in Education Policy programs do across the country, right? We want you to be not only a critical consumer of education policy information, we want you to be an effective producer of that information as well. And so in order to do that, we need you to have sort of a foundation and a sort of skill set in education policy research. And so you'll get that as part of this program. And that's highly marketable in both the sort of federal and state agency context, but also in think tank context as well. Also, if any of you are considering going on to get a PhD or a doctoral degree at some point, having research methods courses and research methods training is going to be advantageous for your graduate school application. I will say that also in here, there's a few opportunities for you to take elective courses, right? So as we sit down, as you start the program, you'll sit down with me and Jenny, and we'll talk about what you want out of the program, what your goals are. And if we see a course and it doesn't necessarily fit your goals, then we'll find another course for you. Some of these courses are non-negotiable, right? But there are 2 or 3 courses in this sequence where, if we think that you will be better served by taking a course in, the gifted and talented group or in sociology or some other sort of program, we're going to go and try and find that course for you, right? So each sort of course sequence or each sort of program plan is tailored to your ultimate career goals. Next slide, please. So you see here, we have a number of learning outcomes, and these are sort of what drives our sort of review of our courses. So our courses are reviewed every 2 years to make sure that they are providing significant value to students and that they are using the most contemporary information that we know. And so we expect that after you complete this program, that again, you can analyze and evaluate education research, in particular education policy research. We also expect that you can think about and understand and critically analyze the structures of the education sectors in a variety of contexts, right? Both in the US and I think in the world. So understanding how education is organized and how that structure influences decision-making at the state and local levels. We hope that you sort of understand how to access and utilize national and international education assessment data. We know that sort of assessment data is oftentimes used in accountability contexts, but it could be used in other contexts as well. And so how, accessing that is critical as you get into, your next role in education. I think most importantly for me is that we train you through a variety of different writing exercises, exposure to faculty and policy practitioners on how to translate research, right? Either your research or others' research into policy recommendations that consider the different contexts or different stakeholders that those recommendations are going to. What you might propose to a city government is probably pretty different than what you might propose to a think tank or in a think tank environment. So we have a differentiation in how in our assignments across our courses that help to push you to become better communicators and better translators of research into these various education policy contexts. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about federal, state legislation and regulatory changes in language. We do that in the sort of intro to policy course, the federal policy course, the state and local policy course. We'll do it in my econ or my education finance course. We talk about sort of how this legislative and regulatory process influences or bounds the education policy that we can make. We spend a lot on education budgets, right? Money matters. And how you spend money is a signal of your priorities. And education is oftentimes a zero-sum game. If I give more money to the higher education sector, I'm probably pulling it from the early childhood or the K-12 sector. So we have to understand what those trade-offs are. And we dive into that in the Ed Finance course. We also have an intentional focus on sort of how our policies and our policy recommendations could help or could harm underrepresented or marginalized student populations. Right? Oftentimes policy is made in at the macro level. And so there are some unintended negative consequences for marginalized or underrepresented communities. We want to take sort of a holistic approach to policy development. We want to think about how, our policy recommendations might impact the average individual, but how it might also impact those individuals who are sort of least served by the education system that we're trying to impact. And so that's a really important framework and framing changes that we have as part of this program around education policy. And then, as I said before, we teach you how to write a variety of reports. So our classes are not just writing academic papers. They're writing reports, policy memos, op-eds, briefings, podcasts, right? Twitter threads, right? We want to push you to be a communicator in a sort of very distinct and unique way. So next slide, please. So this is about a residency. Again, it's a 5-day residency held in DC. Your first semester in the program, I believe it's going to be the last week of July this year. And it's in coordination with the Intro Ed Policy course. Again, this is twofold, right? This is a week-long experience that allows us to supplement coursework and immerse you into the education policy space with guest lectures, and expose you to really thoughtful and high-level people. It's also a cohort building opportunity. The students that are admitted to this program, this opportunity is just for our first-year students. And so you get the intimate conversations with high-level policy leaders, but you also get to learn and meet and grow with your cohort members. And that helps as you go through the program, right? As we're all sort of virtual, having those connections that you made in person at this summer intensive is critical for developing those cohort bonds. And so we are working on securing the sort of final set of our speakers for this summer. And once those are available, we will provide those to students, as they prepare to start the program in the summer. Next slide, please. So as I said, what sets JHU's program apart, again, it's our faculty. Our faculty are amazing. But as I was saying, I think the question I get most is, what can I do with this degree after I graduate? Because our coursework is intentionally focused and connected to real-world policy processes, right? Our students are well positioned to go into a variety of roles that can inform education policy development and reform at the sort of state, federal, local school district level, as well as into like nonprofit organizations. We've seen individuals who were classroom teachers, came to this program, got sort of a depth of policy information, and went on to an education policy career. They went and they transitioned from the classroom into either a role at their school district or a role with a nonprofit organization, focused on something that they're passionate about. And so the curriculum allows for that to occur because we provide you with a variety of skills through the research methods courses, but also through our content-based courses. Next slide, please. So we have implemented sort of an education policy fellows program. This fellows program is available to any applicant. It is a subset of JHU School of Education graduate students who want to make a significant contribution to education policy in their professional career. While it's open to all graduate students in the School of Education, this fellowship program is run by the Masters in Education Policy program, and priority is given to those that are in this program. It's a subset of individuals who help me as the program lead think about what speakers we should bring to campus. What policies should we talk about in brown bags? Where should we as a program make an impact in the education policy space? And so they are also a set of individuals who represent us if we need a small group. One year we had, for our summer intensive, we had a speaker that wanted to take a small group of students out to dinner after the summer intensive. And our education policy fellows were the ones that went to dinner. And so these individuals really are the ones that want to go above and beyond in thinking about the education policy and the impact that it has. So you can submit the application for this through your program application. There are 2 additional essay questions, very short, that just allow our policy fellows committee to get a sense of who you are, where your education policy passions are, and how you're thinking about making a policy impact now and then also after graduation. So, next slide, please.
All right, so now we'll move on to the admission application requirements. So thank you again to Dr. Kramer for the wonderful presentation. First, applicants must submit a completed application, which can be found on our school's website. Keep in mind the application fee is $80. We need official transcripts from all post-secondary institutions that you have attended. Again, we need all official transcripts, including institutions you may have taken courses but did not receive a degree. We'll need your essay and a current resume, 3 letters of recommendation, and finally, the GRE is not required for this program. And please note, we are currently accepting applications for the Education Policy Program, and the application deadline date is April 17, 2023. There are a few additional steps you need to take in order to complete the application process. If you're an international student, you must submit a TOEFL or IELTS score or a TOEFL waiver request form. If your degree was completed outside of the US, you will need to complete a course-by-course evaluation. Additional information can be found on our school's website. For the tuition for the 2022-2023 academic school year for the MS in Education Policy program is $1,365 per credit. In addition to the tuition, please keep in mind the registration fee is $175 per semester and the application fee is $80. For additional information on tuition and fees, please visit the SOE website. If you're interested in applying for financial aid, we strongly encourage you to apply for financial aid when you start your application. In addition to the fellows program that was shared by Dr. Kramer, the School of Education, we offer a limited number of partial need-based institutional scholarships each year. SOE's endowed scholarship awards range on average from $800 to $3,000 per semester and are applied to tuition expenses in the start of fall semester. To see if you qualify to apply for the endowed scholarship, please visit the grants and scholarship page on our school's website. All right, so thank you for attending the Education Policy virtual webinar here at the Johns Hopkins School of Education. At this time, we would like to open up the floor for questions. Okay, so while we wait for questions, Dr. Kramer, we get some frequently asked questions here at the Office of Admissions. The first one is, what is the required residency for this program? And if I live outside the US and am unable to travel to DC for the residency, will I be able to participate in the residency through a virtual platform?
Yeah, that's a great question. And yes, we will make our summer residency available virtually for students that can't make it. Again, we know that I think it's the general philosophy in our program. We know that there are many commitments in life, work, and otherwise that may make it hard for some to travel or be here for 5 days. We would really like to come out for a few days if you can, or be involved however you can, just because you can get that exposure to it. But absolutely, there will be a virtual option for those that can't attend.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Kramer. It looks like we got some really good questions. And Dr. Kramer, feel free to kick us off with these questions.
Okay. Great question. What opportunities are there to build relationships with faculty and staff? If you live in Baltimore, can there be any additional opportunities? Yeah, certainly. Our faculty live across the country, but we do have a focus of faculty that are in the DC and or Baltimore area that you can certainly sort of engage with. Our goal is to provide some opportunities or increase the opportunities for these informal sort of meetings to occur, either in DC or in Baltimore, and hold sort of like brown bag or just other opportunities for students to get together. If you haven't been to DC, we coordinate sort of like DC tours and sort of have that sort of cohort building opportunities. But certainly our faculty are always open to having conversations, getting coffee, doing research if you want to do research with them, either virtually or in person if you live close. So great question. Question regarding full-time versus part-time, anything? So great question, right? So what's interesting full-time, part-time? I'm gonna answer the last question first. Starting part-time and then going full-time, it's really hard to do because our courses are offered in the sort of annual sequence. If you miss a course in that sequence, you have to wait till it happens again, the next year. So is there anything lost for going part-time? No. If you're selected to the Education Policy Fellows program, you'll get half your award in year 1 and half your award in year 2. You know, we have a predetermined curriculum that we think maximizes your learning and opportunities to sort of grow sequentially. And so that I think is there for those that can't go full time. Because our classes are almost all asynchronous, any sort of synchronous conversations or optional learning occurs, I would say, after business hours on the East Coast. And so I do mine at 5 on one day and at 7 p.m. on the next day. And so acknowledging that I'm on the East Coast and that's still sort of 4 p.m. On the West Coast. But we do try to accommodate those that are working. So great question. Is the fellows program, hold on, is the fellows program virtual? No, or it must be in person. No, the fellows program is virtual. If there's opportunities for you to engage with, and you want to come to DC and engage with some policy leaders, you can certainly do that. But the conversations that we have and the sort of work that we do as the fellows is all done virtually. So great question. Question about sort of course availability. I don't know if that was, maybe it was answered. But no, all of our courses that you have, there's no wait list. These courses are designed for the education policy program. You guys get first priority for enrollment in those courses. We will open it up to other programs in case they're interested after all of the students who want to take the course that we have designed have taken it. So you never have to worry about fighting for a seat in a class or not getting to take the class you want to take. We will always make sure that those seats are available for you. Next question is, I've been working in the school system for many years. Graduate due to changing graduation requirements. Will this program help me change education policy to enable? Great question, right? And a lot of passion in this question about how, like, finding ways to make a difference. And that's exactly what this program is trying to do. We are trying to provide you the tools or refine the tools you may already have to really engage in those high-level policy conversations, right? To find ways to effectively connect data with, a problem. And a great example here is, when I was with the State Department of Education in Georgia, I asked the question of how much does attendance matter? And nobody knew. So we did a very complex study that showed attendance mattered a lot. And it was so complex that it went over people's head. But we also found that all we had to do was present the graduation rates, high school graduation rates, by the number of days you missed in 9th grade. If you missed 0 days in 9th grade, you had a 95% graduation rate. If you missed 10 or more days in the 9th grade, you had a 60% graduation rate. That's an effective data presentation. So our program hopes to, our courses are aimed at providing you that skill set so you can go in and have those effective policy change conversations. Great question. There's a question about sort of engaging in the broader community outside. There's a number of ways to do this, right? You've already identified the capstone project as one to do that. We also have the experiential learning course as part of this curriculum. The experiential learning course essentially is an opportunity for you to go out and work or engage with an education organization that fits your passion. So this year, we have 3 individuals who are doing the experiential learning course, and they're interning, or their experiential learning course is with the U.S. Department of Education. They really wanted to engage in federal education policy conversations. And so we built an opportunity for them to spend some time with federal education policy leaders and for them to engage in, those conversations. The same thing can be done at local think tanks or, If you're not in the DC area, education organizations in your area. If you're in Ohio, the Fordham Institute is in Ohio. It's a great, well-respected, influential education policy organization that we could build those sort of experiential learning opportunities for you. How many people are accepted into the program each year? We have found that we try to build cohorts that are roughly around 25 students. That cohort size allows us to have classes with robust conversations. It allows us to have a diverse set of experiences, opinions, perspectives in these policy conversations that I think are critical for any sort of learning that occurs. And so our goal is to always have a cohort around 20 to 25 students. So, I think that's the last question that I had.
Yeah, it looks like that is the last questions. They were really good questions today, Dr. Kramer.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so it looks like there are no more questions. We got to thank you.
Oh, yep, nope.
All right, so it looks like there are no more questions. Here on the slide, we do have some very important contact information. Any admissions related questions, especially about your application, please reach out to my colleague, James McCarty. His email and phone number is on this slide. Any program related question, please reach out to Miss Jennifer Fordham, and her email address is on this slide. Thank you again for your interest in the Johns Hopkins School of Education. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. And thank you to Dr. Kramer for the wonderful presentation today. Have a wonderful evening, everyone.